Boris Becker, welcome to the Sports Agents. It's good to see you.
Thank you very much for having me. Yeah, I just found out we're in three different parts of the world. You're in Istanbul, you're in Manchester, and I'm in Milan, right?
Yeah,
That's how we roll on the Sports Agents, Boris. We could go wherever we go in the world. We're global.
Boris, I know you've talked a lot lately about the book, and a lot of its contents people will have already kind of known about. They've known that you went to jail, but I think it's important to go back and just kind of that period before and what was going on in your life, because I think one of the things that people can't quite believe is that somebody who is as successful as you, seemingly has everything, you know, in terms of the finances, material wealth, could get himself into a situation like that. So can you tell us a little bit about how that came to be and the level of you know, the money that we're talking about?
Well, you can never judge a book by its cover, don't you? So you never really know what's happening on the inside. You don't know that person's business, his surroundings. And all this doesn't happen overnight, right? It wasn't just one bad day or one bad week. It was a process really after I retired from the game of tennis in '99. I was good. And I want to give you a couple of numbers so you get an idea, because obviously I never made 100 million. I've never made 50 million. I walked away with 30 million euros, which was a lot of money then, and it would be a lot of money now. But within the first year after my retirement, I got a divorce. So my ex-wife walked away with 15. So you're already talking about a different number, still a lot of money. But I was pretty good then because I invested this amount into real estate. So I was good. And this amount I still had onto my insolvency. It's just because of I have, 3 grown-up children then. So child support and maintenance over 20 years, paying a large of a 5-figure amount every month for 20 years takes away your cash. So I didn't have the incomes anymore, but I had the fixed outgoings. I was a proud man. I was trying to give my kids the best education, the best livelihood and so forth. Yet I didn't have the same management group and maybe the same business that I had as a tennis player. And I think it's something that happens to a lot of sportsmen, is that after their retirement, they think they still have the same income, yet the outgoings are still around. So again, it was a process of 10, 15 years. So where I didn't have enough cash, but I was asset rich. Just that in a nutshell, hopefully explains a little bit.
And also, therefore, from how you've explained that, you weren't at the prey of individuals who were trying to rip you off. We've seen it with a lot of Premier League footballers from back in the 90s and into the 2000s, that they were sold schemes that really were too good to be true and were vulnerable to people trying to take their money off them. That wasn't the case for you.
No, I wasn't ripped off by management or advice and so forth. Did they give me the best advice? No. But it wasn't a bad investment I had all of a sudden. It was just over 20 years, the child support, the divorce, that costs you a lot of money. Whoever has my age, it's been maybe divorced once or twice and has, a couple of children along the way. And that takes a lot from your cash. And so the incomings, the new contract weren't the same. And then, yes, I don't want to point my finger to other people. Ultimately, it was my decision to associate myself with these people. Maybe I had a wrong friend, maybe too many friends and so forth. So gradually, this insolvency thing happened. It wasn't necessary because the money I owed to a private bank was 3.5 million. So I have assets. In that particular case, I had a finca in Mallorca as a security. So if the judge would have given me 3 more months, I would have sold that money, which ultimately I did a year after my insolvency, and I paid back the money that I owed to the bank in full. The reason I got into a fight with that bank was they put on 25% interest on the money that I owed, which was pretty high. And this is where I maybe point fingers at my advisor at the time, because he said, Boris, that's okay, that's standard. As a tennis player, we we haven't studied business, right? We're not business savvy, especially when you come out of it. Today, I wouldn't make that area anymore, but at 35, I did. So gradually, the interest grows, the expenditure grows, and you just don't have enough income. Where the judge then called me insolvent, even though yes, I may have been cash poor, but asset rich. It wasn't necessary.
So when the judgment was made and you were handed a 2.5-year jail sentence for hiding assets, effectively is what you were convicted of. Were you stunned that the sentence was as long as that? Did you actually expect to go to jail when that case?
Well, also have to explain it a bit in detail. So I wasn't hiding assets. I did a formal error. I did a technical error where I met. I mean, I hope none of you ever been in insolvency. It's a very complicated process. So when I met the trustee on September the 13th, 2017, I gave him everything I know. But obviously, you have to answer truthfully. I said, I don't know yet who owns my house in Germany. My mother lives in there. Give me 2 or 3 weeks, and then I find out. Also, that house had a mortgage, which was done way before my insolvency. And I also had some shares into in a startup company, and they were valued at the time for about £9,000. So I told the trustee, give me 2 or 3 weeks. So on September the 28th, he had the full knowledge of my worth. So I wasn't hiding it. I was 2.5 weeks late. That's what I did. That was my mistake. And for that, I got a 30-month sentence. That's correct. Don't ask me my opinion about it. I'm just giving you facts because there's been so much BS.
In the build-up to that case, were you expecting, because everything in your life had been so gilded, you were this young teenage star who had this amazing life, and I imagine you thought this will all work its way out. Did you actually foresee that you would spend a long period of time in jail for all of this?
Well, never in my wildest dreams I thought I would end up for giving the trustee my account 3 weeks late to end up being at Ancient Wandsworth. Now, in Germany, if you do the same mistake, it was a mistake, no doubt about it, but it wasn't intentionally. I wasn't hiding assets for years. I did a mistake. In Germany, the penalty is a fine. In Italy, you pay the amount, okay? In the UK, it's a bit more strict, but I thought because the debt was secured with a real estate I had in Spain, just give me another 3 or 6 months. I sell the real estate, I pay back to what I owe. Never in my wildest dreams I thought I have to go to jail.
Why wouldn't they give you more time?
Look, how much? You have a week to discuss this, or you have a night, or we have enough? No, listen, it's complicated. And my reference to Wimbledon at 17 is maybe in a nutshell the explanation. I became a wunderkind. I became a household name. I became a big target, meaning if they get Boris Becker, they get anybody else. Okay, Boris Becker must have the best lawyers, and he must be, lawyered up, as they say. He must have the best advisors. No, I didn't, right? So obviously by getting Boris Becker, they scare everybody else off the street of always declaring exactly how much they're worth, what they owe, and so forth. So my story is Wimbledon. If I would have won at 21, I wouldn't have been a wunderkind. I wouldn't have been a big deal. And then the story probably, I can't prove it, but probably wouldn't even be a criminal case, because what I've owed was money, undoubtedly, and all of a sudden became a media circus. It was more about the headlines than about the actual facts.
And you mentioned Wandsworth as well, which is not, by all accounts, an easy jail. It's not something
No.
It's not the prison that one would tick as the preferred choice. I mean, there are some seriously dangerous people inside Wandsworth prison. Did that surprise you as well, that was where you were sent?
It's one of the most dangerous prison in the UK, undoubtedly, and you have really bad people there. They're murderers and pedophiles and drug dealers and me. So my crime was, as they say, a white collar crime. Fine, I accepted it, but then put me into a prison with other white collar criminals, so to speak. But that's not the system. So I can't change the system. I'm just giving you in the book what exactly happened to me. It's not for me anymore to question whether that was right or wrong. It happened. I accepted it and I moved on. It's just because the story was so big. All these wonderful, crazy journalists ran away with the headline and so forth. And this, for me, was why it was reason to write a book and to say, okay, guys, whether you like it or not, that's what happened to me. Take it or leave it.
Okay, so you're convicted of, as you say, a white collar crime. You're put into one of the
That's what it was. Yeah.
Yeah, you're put into one of the most feared prisons in the country. You arrive at this prison, and what happens to you? Where are you put? Are you put in a cell with someone else? Do you know what that person has done? Talk us through your first 24, 48 hours in prison.
Yeah, I was scared. I was going to use a swear word, but I'm not going to use it on your show.
No, you can.
I was
You
really
can.
scared.
We can do swearing, Boris.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. I said I was scared shitless. Okay, because I was not my environment. I didn't know, how prison works. In particular, I didn't know how HMP once was. But thankfully, for the director in prison, because he told me, listen, we're going to give you a single cell because we want to protect you from the other criminals. They may take advantage of your novice. You've never been here. You don't know the rules. Prison world is a different world. And then I'm going to give you a couple of listeners on your hand because, yes, they're criminal, but they're trustworthy. We call them long timers. They've been 5, 6, 7 years. They've been good prisoners. What you can say that. So they will look after you. But still, they put me in a really small cell naturally. And because it was a Friday night and Monday was a bank holiday, I couldn't speak to anybody until Tuesday. So you spent those first 24 hours, 22 hours inside the cell. Everybody's screaming at night because they're scared or they harm themselves or they want to kill themselves or they want to get some attention, which I found out later. But you don't know that inside. So yes, I was the most scary times of my life were those 3 nights until the door opened on Tuesday morning and I could speak to the listeners. Crazy.
And you are not to know at this point that was just for the weekend. And presumably you're thinking, is this how it's going to be for my whole time in this prison until you can actually speak to somebody and understand? So those people that the directors promised you would look after you and be some source of comfort to you. How quickly did you forge relationships and friendships with those people?
Yeah, so on the Tuesday morning, when they let me out again, very quickly met the listeners. This is a bunch of the criminals that are in good respect within the prison system. They're long timers, so they've already in 5, 6, 7 years. And they would look after newbies like me who had no clue what is happening. So you could ask your questions about, why the screams at night, how do I get a job, who's dangerous, about the canteen, about the food, and prison rules. So they were with me, as long as they could. They quickly got me a job on that first Wednesday, which is unusual that you're in 5, 6 days, you have a job. You need a job because you want to make your 1 or 2 pounds a day, because you want to make your phone calls outside and you want to get some food. If you don't have a job, you start with 15 pounds a week and you usually split them up 50-50 for calls and for food. But then on the Wednesday, I got a job as a math teacher and an English teacher. So they paid me another 2 pounds a day, 5 days a week. And so with 25 pounds, you could get along. But it's all because the listeners realized that I'm vulnerable. I don't know anything. And if I'm not protected, something's going to happen to me.
And they protected you from the possibility of violence, did they?
Well, HMP Wandsworth is a very dangerous place. You're talking about serious criminals. You talk about 2,000 of them, and you have about, 100, 150 wardens. So naturally, who's controlling who? So these listeners made sure that I'm not with the wrong crowd, that I'm not taken advantage of. And also you form your own little gang, meaning the prisoners are, tough boys. There's maybe 6 or 7 of them looked after me all the time. Maybe they were instructed by the director of prison, because otherwise bullying is a daily thing. People come into your cell and take advantage of you. And so in order that it didn't happen for me, I needed that protection. I mean, it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy.
Take advantage of you, what do you mean?
They take your stuff They abuse you physically. You're just becoming. I was going to use another word, but I won't now. But you're becoming their slaves in a way. You're going to listen to what they want from you, and I mean anything. That's happening right now in most prisons in the UK.
Because of the listeners, then, did you feel okay, or did you still feel vulnerable? And to go back to your phrase earlier, scared shitless. On a daily basis, did you always feel like you had to look over your shoulder?
I had to look over me from the first day until the last day in prison, because you sometimes walk through the corridors, you walk to your job, the listeners are not always with you, but you have to form a little army. Prison is a lot about respect, that you get respect inside, and being amongst these listeners, that gave me a lot of respect. It doesn't mean I was always protected. So naturally, you have to, even though you're not, you have to show a lot of self-confidence. You walk a little higher, you look people in the eye, so you're not scared. Prisoners will be taken advantage of who look scared.
May sound like a very stupid question, Boris. Were you vulnerable because you were new, or were you vulnerable because you were Boris Becker? I.e., did they all know you were Boris Becker?
They had no clue that I was a famous tennis player.
Right.
No, I was. My name was my number. I was 82923 EV. That was my name. And some of them maybe called me Boris, but they had no clue. They saw me on TV maybe, the last couple of weeks, because my trial was very present. But they didn't know that I was a tennis player, or that I, once upon a time, I won a Wimbledon tournament. They didn't know that, thankfully.
Did they begin to know that? Did anybody?
They knew. That I first came to Wandsworth at the end of April. By the time Wimbledon came around, and on inside I had 3 channels, with little television. It was BBC, it was ITV, and Channel 4. Once Wimbledon came around, and I got to know that there was some tennis history, and then they saw my wife and my son in the box of Novak Djokovic. They put 1 and 1 together. But by then, we're talking July, right? But by then, I was organized. I was with the tough boys, as I call them. They were protecting me. I was looked after by the right people, and then I was fine. But really, until July, they didn't put together 1 and 1.
What were there positives from prison?
Well, you learn a lot about yourself. You learn that ultimately it's all about your personality and character. That's all you have left with, regardless whether you're rich or you're poor. It taught me to think about what happened to me. How could I end up in HMP Wandsworth or in HMP Huntercombe? The people that I hung out with, my mindset was different. It was different as a tennis player, and then in my after career. So you have a lot of time. Time is the enemy, but it became my friend, because it really taught me, the do's and the don'ts. And 2.5 years later, I'm outside, and I'm very much on the right track. But it gave me time to rearrange my life, and in a way to cleanse me, to clean me of my old self.
So you're a better person now because of it?
I think so. I don't think I was a bad person as a tennis player. I think after my career, I don't think I was a bad person either, but I was too comfortable. I was too lazy. I wanted the easy life. I wasn't that disciplined anymore. I wasn't that concentrated. I lost my focus, which can happen when you're young and you have a lot of money. So that is not happening anymore. No.
Do you worry?
I mean, also in a moment of great despair, most of your so-called friends, they walk away, they leave you. You're left with a very small group. Starting my partner then, and my wife now. Obviously my kids, but the number of friends that stick with you and asking whether they can help you is from, I think, 150 to 5. So that's the drop of friends you have.
Do you worry about players like Alcaraz is winning titles at a young age, not as young as you, and that they would not have the support system around them, the right people around them to not end up 20 years down the line having a similar experience?
Look, I wonder for all successful teenagers. I wonder for all the wunderkinds that are out there. If you're very successful as a young age in music or in sports, what you're going to do at 35. What are you going to do at 40? Who's going to be with you? And it's a problem that most stars, when they're kids, have. I mean, it's a dark number. We don't want to talk about it, but it's not unusual that very successful athletes or musicians get into trouble in the later years.
Do you think it's a double-sided problem in many ways, Boris? Because they get to 35, let's take 35 as a random age, they get to their mid-30s and that first career may be over where they've had all that success, but also all the way through that success, they haven't lived a normal life. So normal, again, in inverted commas. So it's trying to do normal things whilst also trying to find a new purpose. Is that what it basically came down to for you?
Well, that's exactly the problem. First of all, you have to find the purpose. When you're a millionaire in your early 30s, not because you got it from your parents, because you earned it. Every pound and dollar and euro I made, I earned it. So you take things for granted, but naturally, because we're human people, we get a little complacent, we get a little lazy, and we also, as a tennis player, you have to be very disciplined, right? You have to sleep at a certain hours, you can't drink, you can't have food, obviously no drugs. But in the later years, you drink. In my case, I drank too much, I ate too much, I got a little lazy, I slept in, and then naturally you're looking for the easy life. That's a very common thread by most stars when they had success in their teenage years.
Boris, I know you paid off the last of the debts when you left prison, and you're starting your kind of professional life again. You can't come back to the UK at the moment. That's correct, isn't it?
Yeah, that's correct. I'd love to come back to the UK. I mean, I love London. I love Wimbledon. I'm working closely with the Home Office and the Ministry of Justice. And the problem is, my case is unprecedented. It's never happened before. So there's not a similar case. So that's the difficulty and then laws change over the years. But I'm working at it. I'd love to come back one day to the UK. Absolutely.
Would there ever be a world in which we'd hear your voice again on the Wimbledon coverage?
Look, I'd love to come back to the club Wimbledon. The club for me is the best club in the world. It paved my life. All the good and the bad things, I guess, happened to me because I won Wimbledon 17. It's part of my DNA. So I want to go back to the club. Now, I'm happy to work for TV if the BBC wants me, if other channels want me, but I'm working already for Sky Italy for Wimbledon. So work issue, it's not the problem. The problem is, or it's not a problem, is that in my heart of hearts, I'd love to walk through SW19 and smell the roses and be part of the club again.
What has to happen then for that to happen?
Look, politicians in general, they work kind of slow. Then political parties change in governments. Then it's me and thousands of others wanting to come back to the UK. In my case, I don't want to live there. I want to visit. I want to work, and then I go back home to Italy. But this department that I'm talking about, their stable is that big, right? It's me and 1,000 others. And then you have to have the same person for the next year or two in the same political position. Then we can make progress.
I found one of the things you said just earlier was, I don't know whether I find that quite sad or not. You said it cleansed you of your former self. Did you feel you needed cleansing of your former self?
I felt I needed cleansing from the man between 35 and 50. Yeah, I was on the wrong track. I was hanging with the wrong people. I had wrong ideas how I want to live my life. Yes, from the man between 17 and 35, I was happy.
For you, the process of rehabilitating yourself almost was being away from everything. But in terms of prison, do you have any strong opinions on what prison does and whether it works for the kind of criminals that you saw around you? Has it made you reflect on that?
Well, I mean, first of all, there's a reason people come into prison, right? So they broke the law. Then the question is, why did you do it? Are you a repeat offender? And what is your goal once you're out? The prison system in the UK is very tough. Once you're out, and you don't get deported. You're on license. When you're licensed, you can't travel, you can't really work. And that's a difficult thing for a prisoner that's released. And then obviously, mentally, I don't think there's enough support for especially long timers, because they say after 8 or 10 years inside, prison never leaves you, even though you're outside. So the whole mindset has to change. The real support has to change. And I don't think that's possible for long timers.
Did you see other people get some kind of enlightenment, and while you were there, people that you knew, when they go out of here, their life is changed?
Well, I was part of the Stoic team. I became a student because one of the warden inside, he was the gym teacher, but also the Stoic teacher. I became a student. Then I became a Stoic teacher because I have quite more experience than most other prisoners. So that enlightened me. Stoicism is not a religion, but a philosophy. Mm-hmm. And I think I was able to convert a couple of dangerous criminals to do the right thing and not the wrong thing. Most prisoners are re-offenders. So then the first question is, was it worth it? Is there another way how you want to make money? You want to stay on the straight and narrow. Maybe you have to change the circle of friends. Maybe it's ultimately your fault that you're inside. It's nobody else's fault. So all these things happened to me, and I was speaking as a Stoic teacher to lots of prisoners.
You were adored as a tennis player, Boris. When people, do you get any sense of how people are with you now? Are people sympathetic to your plight? Are they, oh, Boris, what did you do? Where do you sense opinion is with you, and does it matter to you?
Well, I think we're very glad is that the tennis community took me back with open arms. So I immediately had a job because I came up with zero, right? I came up with nothing. So you need a job, and the tennis community quickly opened their arms, with television work and sponsorship and all that. And I must say, people were curious. How am I going to do that one? I'm kind of known for comebacks on the tennis court. That the fifth set was my territory. The tiebreak was my territory. I was playing my fifth set, right, and I was able to do the right things. And I think people are surprised by that. How quickly I reestablished a good life. How quickly I have a decent life now, and that's because of hard work and discipline and just being with the right people. So it's possible. It's possible to lose it all and come back within a couple of years if you make the right decision. So I think it's also an inspiring story. And people mess up, right? People make mistakes, but you can correct them as long as you understand the mistakes and you're willing to do what it takes to correct it. And I hope with this book I can inspire people who are in difficulties. It can happen that you fall down, but you always must get up.
And you love tennis as much as you ever did?
Look, I learned nothing else, I guess, right? I'm pretty good. I was pretty good as a player. I'm decent as a commentator, as a coach. So that's my backbone. Very few people, I guess, know more about the sport than I do because I've done it in so many various roles. And I like the tennis environment. I like the one-to-one spectacle. And I like the characters in tennis. I think they're cool players. On the man, on the female side, they're really cool guys. And this is my territory, and that's where I'm comfortable.
Boris, thank you very much for giving us your time this afternoon. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
The Sports Agents
with Gabby Logan and Mark Chapman.